The crowd pressed forward like a wave against the palace gates. Thousands of tourists filled the courtyard, cameras raised, voices blending into one massive hum. Children sat on their parents' shoulders. Phones flashed. Everyone wanted the perfect shot of the changing of the guard, but something was wrong. In the second row, near the black iron fence, a woman swayed on her feet. Her face had gone pale. Her eyes rolled back. And then, without warning, she dropped. The people around her gasped. Some stepped back. Others pulled out their phones, filming. No one moved to help. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know if they were allowed. But one person saw everything. Lance Corporal James Alfred stood 15 feet away, locked in formation with the other guards. His red tunic was perfectly pressed. His bearskin hat sat tall and heavy on his head. His rifle rested against his shoulder. He was trained not to move, not to react, not to break formation for anything. The rules were absolute. Royal guards were living statues. They represented centuries of tradition. They did not flinch. They did not speak. They did not step out of line, but James saw the woman hit the ground. He saw her head strike the pavement. He saw the pool of people around her freeze in confusion, and in that moment, he made a choice. He broke formation. The movement was instant. 1 second, he was part of the line. The next, he was sprinting toward her, boots pounding the stone courtyard. His rifle swung at his side. His hat tilted as he ran. The crowd parted in shock. If you're loving this story, hit that subscribe button now. You don't want to miss what happens next. James dropped to one knee beside the woman. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was shallow. He quickly checked her pulse. Still there, but weak. Step back, please, he said firmly to the crowd. His voice cut through the noise. People obeyed. He tilted her head gently to open her airway. He loosened the scarf around her neck. His hands moved with precision, not from guard training, but from the first aid course every soldier completed. Behind him, the ceremony had stopped. The other guards stood frozen, unsure. The officers watched from the gates. And somewhere high above, in the palace windows, eyes were watching too. James didn't think about that. He didn't think about the consequences. He only thought about the woman in front of him struggling to breathe. Stay with me, he whispered. Help is coming. The crowd had gone silent now. All cameras were on him. Thousands of people held their breath. Then, faintly, the woman's eyes fluttered open. She gasped, confused, trying to sit up. Easy, James said softly. You fainted. Don't move yet. She blinked up at him, her face filled with fear and relief. I'm sorry, she whispered. You have nothing to be sorry for, he replied. Sirens echoed in the distance. Medics were coming. But James stayed by her side, one hand on her shoulder, keeping her calm. The rest of the world blurred around him. What he didn't know was that this single moment, this one, decision to break the rules, was about to change his life forever. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They pushed through the crowd with a stretcher and medical kits. James stepped aside to let them work, but he stayed close, answering their questions. She collapsed suddenly, he explained. Pulse was weak. She's been conscious for about a minute now. The lead medic nodded, checking her vitals. You did well, he said quietly. She'll be fine, James exhaled. Relief washed over him. But then reality hit. He looked back toward the palace gates. The changing of the guard had resumed, but it felt different now. Stiff, tense. The other soldiers stood in perfect lines again, but their eyes flicked toward him. Some looked concerned. Others looked confused, and then James saw him. Captain Reynolds stood near the gates, arms crossed, his face unreadable. He was the officer in charge of the ceremony, a man known for his strictness, a man who believed tradition was everything. Their eyes met across the courtyard. James's stomach dropped. He straightened his posture, adjusted his hat, and marched back toward the formation. Every step felt heavier than the last. The crowd watched him go. Some clapped. Some cheered. But James barely heard them. He took his position in line, standing at attention once more. His heart pounded in his chest. His hands were steady on his rifle, but his mind raced. What had he done? The ceremony ended 20 minutes later. The guards marched back through the gates in perfect rhythm. Left, right, left, right. The tourists applauded. The day returned to normal. But for James, nothing felt normal. As soon as they were inside the palace grounds, Captain Reynolds's voice rang out. "Lance Corporal Alfred." "My office now." James swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." The other guards glanced at him as they dispersed. No one said a word. They didn't have to. Everyone knew what breaking formation meant. James followed the captain down a narrow stone hallway. The walls were lined with portraits of kings and queens. The air smelled like old wood and polish. His boots echoed against the floor. They reached the captain's office. A small, dark room with a single window overlooking the courtyard. Captain Reynolds stepped inside and closed the door behind them. He didn't sit. He stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Do you know what you've done?" he asked, his voice low and controlled. "Yes, sir," James replied. "I broke formation." "You didn't just break formation, Alfred. You disrupted a royal ceremony. You ignored centuries of protocol. You made a spectacle in front of thousands of people." James kept his eyes forward. "I understand, sir, do you?" The captain turned to face him now. His expression was hard. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you thought you were above the rules." James's jaw tightened. He wanted to defend himself. He wanted to say that saving a life was more important than tradition, but he stayed silent. The captain stepped closer. "What if it had been a test? What if someone in that crowd was trying to provoke you? What if breaking formation put others at risk?" "It wasn't a test, sir," James said quietly. "She was dying. You don't know that. I could see it." Captain Reynolds stared at him for a long moment. The silence stretched between them like a blade. Finally, the captain sighed. "You'll be written up. There will be a formal inquiry. And depending on what they decide, you could lose your position." "I understand, sir. Do you have anything else to say?" James hesitated. Then he spoke, his voice steady. "If I had to do it again, sir, I would." The captain's eyes narrowed. But before he could respond, there was a knock at the door. "Come in!" Reynolds barked. The door opened. A young aide stepped inside, holding a sealed envelope. "Sir, this just came from the royal household. It's marked urgent." Captain Reynolds took the envelope, frowning. He tore it open and read the contents. His face changed. James watched, confused as the captain's expression shifted from anger to shock to something else entirely. The captain looked up at him. "You're dismissed for now, Alfred. Don't leave the grounds." "Yes, sir." James saluted and left the office, his mind spinning. What was in that letter? What did it mean? He wouldn't have to wait long to find out. James spent the rest of the day in a fog. He went through the motions, cleaning his uniform, polishing his boots, eating dinner in the mess hall. But his mind was somewhere else. The other guards didn't know what to say to him. Some nodded as he passed. Others avoided eye contact. The story had already spread through the barracks. Everyone was talking about it. Did you hear? Alfred broke formation. He saved someone's life. Doesn't matter. Rules are rules. James tried to ignore the whispers, but they followed him everywhere. That night, he lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. He replayed the moment over and over in his mind. The woman's pale face, her body hitting the ground, the choice he'd made in a split second. He didn't regret it, but he was afraid of what came next. The next morning, James was summoned again. But this time, it wasn't to Captain Reynolds' office, it was to the palace. His stomach twisted as he walked through the grand hallways. Marble floors stretched beneath his feet. Gold-framed paintings lined the walls. Chandeliers glittered overhead. He'd been inside the palace before, but never like this. Never alone. Never summoned, a royal aide led him to a private sitting room. The furniture was elegant and old. Sunlight poured through tall windows, and sitting near the fireplace waiting for him was someone he never expected to see. Princess Catherine. James froze in the doorway. His heart hammered in his chest. He'd seen her from a distance before, during ceremonies, but never this close. Never like this. She looked up and smiled. Lance Corporal Alfred. Please, come in. James stepped inside, his movements stiff. He saluted. Your Royal Highness, at ease, she said gently. Sit, please. He sat down carefully on the edge of a chair, his back straight, his hands on his knees. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know why he was here. The princess studied him for a moment. Her expression was warm but serious. I wanted to meet you personally, she said. To thank you. James blinked. Thank me, ma'am. For what you did yesterday. For helping that woman. I was just doing what anyone should do, James said quietly. But you weren't just anyone, she replied. You were on duty. You were in formation. And you chose to break protocol to save a life. She paused. That takes courage. James didn't know what to say. He'd expected punishment. He'd expected consequences. Not this. I know there's been talk of disciplinary action, the princess continued. But I've spoken with your superiors. And I want you to know that what you did was not wrong. It was human. It was compassionate. And it's exactly the kind of character we need in the people who serve this family. Hush. James felt a lump rise in his throat. Thank you, ma'am. She leaned forward slightly. Can I ask you something? Of course, when you saw her fall, what went through your mind? James thought for a moment. I didn't think, ma'am. I just moved. She needed help, and no one else was doing anything. The princess nodded slowly. That's what I thought. She smiled. You acted on instinct. On empathy. That's rare. It was a long pause. James could hear the clock ticking on the mantel. I want you to know, she said finally, that you won't be punished. In fact, I've recommended you for a commendation. James's eyes widened. A commendation? Yes. For service above and beyond duty. Couldn't believe what he was hearing. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. She stood, and James quickly rose to his feet. Just keep being the person you showed us yesterday. She extended her hand. James shook it carefully, still in shock. Thank you, ma'am, he said again. As he left the room, his head was spinning. A commendation, not a punishment, not a dismissal. A commendation. But as he walked back through the palace halls, he had no idea that the story wasn't over yet. In fact, it was only just beginning, because while he'd been meeting with the princess, something else had been happening. Something that would change everything. The video had gone viral. By the time James returned to the barracks, everything had changed. The other guards crowded around him, shouting questions. Mate, have you seen it? You're all over the internet. Everyone's talking about you. James pushed through them, confused. What are you talking about? One of the guards shoved a phone in his face. On the screen was a video. James recognized it immediately. The courtyard, the crowd, the woman collapsing, and then himself, breaking formation, running toward her. The video had been filmed by a tourist. The angle was shaky, but the moment was clear. James kneeling beside the woman, James checking her pulse, James staying with her until the medics arrived, and underneath the video, the caption read, Royal Guard breaks protocol to save tourist's life. True hero. James stared at the screen. The video had millions of views. Millions. They're calling you a hero, James, one of the guards said, grinning. You're famous. James sat down on his bunk, overwhelmed. He scrolled through the comments. This is what real honor looks like. Forget the protocol. He did the right thing. The royal family should be proud of him. I'm crying. This is the most beautiful thing I've seen. But not all the comments were positive. He broke the rules. Tradition matters. What if this had been a distraction? What if it was a security threat? He should be fired. Discipline exists for a reason. James closed his eyes. The attention felt suffocating. He'd never wanted this. He'd just wanted to help. Over the next few days, the story exploded. News outlets picked it up. Journalists requested interviews. Social media influencers made reaction videos. The woman James had saved, a teacher named Margaret from Australia, gave a tearful interview from her hotel room. "I don't remember much," she said, her voice shaking, "but I remember his face. I remember him telling me it was okay. If he hadn't acted so quickly, I don't know what would have happened. I owe him my life." The video of her interview was shared thousands of times. People called for James to be honored. Petitions started online demanding he receive recognition. But inside the palace walls, opinions were divided. Some officials believed James had done the right thing. Others believed he'd set a dangerous precedent. If one guard could break formation, what would stop others from doing the same? Captain Reynolds was caught in the middle. He'd been overruled by the royal household, but he still believed in tradition, still believed in discipline. One evening, he called James back to his office. James stood at attention, his stomach tight. "At ease, Alfred," the captain said. He sounded tired. James relaxed slightly. "Sir?" Reynolds leaned back in his chair. "You've put me in a difficult position." "I didn't mean to, sir. I know," the captain sighed. "But the fact remains, you broke the rules. And now, everyone's watching to see what we do about it." James said nothing. "The royal household wants to honor you. The public wants to honor you. But some of my colleagues think you should be made an example of." He paused. "So I need to ask you something, sir. If you were in my position, what would you do?" James thought carefully. "I'd ask myself what the uniform stands for, sir. Is it just about following orders? Or is it about serving the people?" Captain Reynolds studied him. "And you think saving that woman was serving the people?" "Yes, sir. I do." The captain nodded slowly. "So do I." James blinked in surprise. "I was angry," Reynolds admitted. "I thought you'd made us look weak. But I've been reading the comments. I've been watching the interviews. And I realize now that you didn't make us look weak. You made us look human." He stood up. "You reminded people why we wear this uniform." James felt a weight lift off his chest. "You're going to receive a commendation," the captain continued. "And you're going to continue serving. But understand this. Alfred, you got lucky. The next time someone breaks formation, they might not have the backing you did." "I understand, sir." "Good. Dismissed." James saluted and turned to leave. But as he reached the door, the captain spoke again. "Alfred, you did the right thing." James smiled. "Thank you, sir." As he walked back to the barracks, he felt lighter than he had in days. The weight of uncertainty was gone. He wasn't being punished. He wasn't being dismissed. He was being honored, but there was still one person he needed to see. One person who'd been at the center of it all, Margaret. The woman he'd saved had asked to meet him before she returned to Australia. And tomorrow, that meeting would finally happen. The meeting was arranged in a quiet room inside the palace. No cameras. Just James and Margaret. When James walked in, she was already there, sitting on a sofa with her hands folded in her lap. She looked healthier now. Color had returned to her cheeks. And her eyes were bright. But when she saw him, tears filled her eyes. "It's you," she whispered. James smiled gently. "Hello, Margaret." She stood quickly and walked toward him. Before he could say anything else, she hugged him. It wasn't formal. It wasn't polite. It was the hug of someone who owed their life to another person. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "Thank you so much." James hugged her back carefully. "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "You saved my life. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there." They sat down together, and Margaret told him what she remembered. "I've had low blood pressure my whole life," she explained. "But I didn't think it was serious. I'd been walking all day in the heat, and I didn't drink enough water. I felt dizzy, but I thought I'd be fine. And then everything went black." "You hit your head pretty hard," James said. "I know." "The doctors said if I'd been alone or if no one had helped me right away, I could have had a concussion. Or worse." James nodded. "I'm glad you're okay." Margaret looked at him with gratitude and something deeper admiration. "I heard what you risked for me, that you could have been punished, that you broke the rules. I didn't think about the rules, James said honestly. I just thought about you. Margaret smiled through her tears. You're a good man, James Alfred. They talked for a while longer. Margaret told him about her life in Australia, her students, her family, her love of travel. James told her about growing up in a small town, about joining the military, about finding purpose in service. Before she left, Margaret handed him a small envelope. What's this? James asked. A letter? From my students. When they heard what happened, they all wrote to you. I thought you might like to read them. James opened the envelope later that night. Inside were dozens of handwritten notes on colorful paper. Thank you for being a hero. Girl. So brave, my teacher is alive because of you. When I grow up, James sat on his bunk, reading each one. His throat tightened. He hadn't realized how far the impact of that single moment had spread, but the biggest surprise came a week later. James was called to the palace again. This time, it was for a formal ceremony. The royal family was presenting him with a commendation for bravery and service. He stood in a grand hall, surrounded by officials, other guards, and members of the press. His parents had been flown in for the occasion. They sat in the front row, his mother crying. His father, beaming with pride, Princess Catherine stepped forward, holding a medal on a ribbon. Lance Corporal James Alfred, she began, her voice clear and strong. You have demonstrated exceptional courage, compassion, and integrity. In a moment when others hesitated, you acted. You placed the life of another above protocol, above tradition, and above yourself. Today, we honor you not just as a soldier, but as a symbol of what it means to serve. She pinned the medal to his chest. The room erupted in applause. James stood at attention, his heart swelling with emotion. He thought of Margaret. He thought of her students. He thought of the woman lying on the ground, struggling to breathe. And he knew, without a doubt, that he'd made the right choice. After the ceremony, reporters surrounded him, asking for interviews. James kept his answers short and humble. I was just doing my job, he said. Anyone would have done the same. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. Not everyone would have acted. Not everyone would have risked what he risked. That night, back in the barracks, James sat with the medal in his hands. It was small and simple, but it meant everything. One of the other guards clapped him on the shoulder. You did good, mate. James smiled. Thanks. But as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he thought about the bigger picture. About how one moment, one decision, could ripple outward in ways he never imagined. He'd broken formation. He'd broken the rules. And in doing so, he'd reminded the world of something important. That sometimes, being human is more important than being perfect. Months passed. The media frenzy faded. The viral videos slipped down the algorithm. Life at the palace returned to its usual rhythm. But for James, everything had changed. He still stood at attention during ceremonies. He still wore the red tunic and the bearskin hat. He still followed protocol. But now people looked at him differently. Tourists pointed him out. Children waved. Some even asked for photos after his shift. And James realized something important. He wasn't just a symbol of tradition anymore. He was a symbol of humanity within the tradition. One afternoon, during a routine ceremony, James noticed a young boy in the crowd. The child was maybe 6 years old, wearing a toy soldier uniform. He stared at James with wide, admiring eyes. When the ceremony ended, the boy's father approached James carefully. Excuse me, sir. My son wanted to meet you. He's been talking about you ever since he saw the video. James knelt down to the boy's level. Hello there. The boy's face lit up. Are you the hero guard? James smiled. I'm just a guard who did what was right. My dad says you're brave, the boy said. I want to be brave like you. James looked into the child's eyes. He saw hope. He saw innocence. He saw the future. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared, James said gently. It means you do the right thing, even when it's hard. Can you do that? The boy nodded eagerly. I can try. That's all any of us can do, James replied. He shook the boy's small hand. Keep trying. As the boy and his father walked away, James felt something settle in his chest, a sense of purpose that went beyond the uniform. That evening, James received an unexpected phone call. It was Margaret, calling from Australia. "James, I hope you don't mind," she said. "I just wanted to check in. See how you're doing." "Doing well," James replied. "How about you?" "Much better. I've been taking better care of myself. Drinking more water, resting when I need to. My students won't let me forget what happened. They've made me promise to be careful." "Good," James said. "I'm glad." "I also wanted to tell you something," Margaret continued. "My school is doing a fundraiser. We're raising money for first aid training programs. We want to teach people how to help in emergencies, the way you helped me." James felt a warmth spread through him. "That's incredible, Margaret. It's because of you," she said. "You inspired us. You showed us that one person can make a difference." After they hung up, James sat in silence for a long time. The ripple effect of that single moment continued to spread. Margaret's students learning first aid, a young boy wanting to be brave, people around the world talking about compassion and courage. He'd broken formation for 60 seconds. And it had changed lives. A few weeks later, James was approached by a senior officer with an unexpected offer.
"Hi, we'd like you to help develop a new training program,"
the officer explained. "Teaching guards how to balance protocol with emergency response, how to make judgment calls in critical situations." James was stunned. "Me, sir? You've proven you can think under pressure. You've proven you have the instincts we need. Will you do it?" James didn't hesitate. "Yes, sir. I'd be honored." The program launched 6 months later. Guards across the country were trained not just in tradition and ceremony, but in first aid, crisis response, and ethical decision-making. The initiative was called the Alfred Protocol. James never imagined his name would be attached to something so important. But as he stood in front of his first class of trainees, he felt the weight of responsibility and the lightness of purpose. "The uniform we wear represents history," he told them. "But it also represents the people we serve. And sometimes serving the people means breaking formation. It means making the hard choice. It means being human." The trainees listened intently. Some took notes. Others simply nodded. "You'll face moments where you have to decide between protocol and compassion," James continued. "And I can't tell you which to choose. But I can tell you this. When you make your choice, make sure it's one you can live with. Make sure it's one that honors the reason you put on this uniform in the first place." After the training session, a young recruit approached him. "Sir, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever regret what you did? Breaking formation?" James thought about the question. He thought about the woman on the ground, the medal on his chest, the boy who wanted to be brave, Margaret's students learning first aid, the lives that had been touched. He smiled. Not for a second. Years later, James would stand in that same courtyard, watching a new generation of guards perform the changing of the guard, and he'd remember the day he broke formation. He'd remember the fear, the choice, the consequences. But most of all, he'd remember why he did it. Because beneath the uniform, beneath the tradition, beneath the rules, there was a human heart. And sometimes, that heart had to beat louder than anything else. James Alford had saved a life. But in doing so, he'd saved something else too. He'd saved the belief that compassion could coexist with duty. That honor wasn't just about following orders. It was about following your conscience. And that was the story the world needed to hear. Not just about a guard who broke formation, but about a man who chose humanity over protocol and reminded everyone watching that sometimes breaking the rules is the most honorable thing you can do. The crowd still gathers at the palace gates. Cameras still flash. Tourists still watch in awe. But now, when they see the royal guard standing in perfect formation, they see something more than statues. They see people. People with hearts. People who, when the moment calls for it, will step forward and do what's right. And that's a tradition worth keeping.